Sometimes life changes in a moment, an ordinary, unremarkable moment that turns into something you can't forget. For me, it started on a Saturday. I remember because it was one of those days when nothing special seemed to be happening. My wife, Emma, was upstairs helping our youngest with homework. And I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. Her laptop was open on the counter, and honestly, I wasn't paying it any attention. Until a message notification popped up. That notification changed everything. I didn't know it then, but what I was about to see would flip my world upside down. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this. Before we dive into the full story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. This is just the beginning, and things are about to get real. At first, I thought nothing of it. I'm not the type to snoop. But curiosity, it's a funny thing. Before I knew it, I had clicked the notification, and what I saw, it felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. It was a chat between Emma and a man named Mark, someone I knew she'd been friends with for years. But this wasn't just friendly banter. Mark was threatening her, demanding she continue an affair they'd had in the past. He said he'd expose everything if she didn't give in. Her messages back were desperate. She begged him to stop, saying she didn't want to hurt me or destroy our family. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Disbelief, anger, betrayal, they all hit me at once. But there was something else too, confusion. Why would she do this to me? How long had this been going on? Had everything we built together been a lie? I didn't have answers, just a million questions that wouldn't stop spinning in my head. I didn't confront her at that moment. I didn't trust myself to say the right things. And the last thing I wanted was a shouting match. I needed space to think, so I walked out of the house. I walked for what felt like hours, replaying every detail of what I'd read. Trying to piece together what had happened to my marriage. Part of me wanted to confront Mark right then and there. But what would that solve? I didn't need more chaos, I needed clarity. When I got back home, I sat down with a pen and paper. I started writing, pouring my thoughts onto the page. I told Emma everything I felt, my heartbreak, anger, and love for her and our kids. I told her I'd seen the messages, that I knew about the affair and the blackmail. I wrote about my fears, not just for myself, but for our family. But I didn't stop there. I gave her a choice. If she wanted to save our marriage, she had to be honest, completely honest. She had to agree to therapy to work on rebuilding the trust she'd broken. And she had to report Mark to the authorities. I wouldn't let him hold this over our heads. I made it clear, though, that if she broke my trust again, that would be it. No second chances, no compromises, she would forfeit everything. Her rights to our home and this family we'd built together. And if she wasn't willing to accept my terms, then it was better for both of us to end it now. When I was done, I folded the letter, placed it on her desk, and went to bed. I didn't sleep much that night, and by morning, I knew what I had to do. I walked out the door without a word because I needed to be away from this house. I left without a plan, just the clothes on my back and my car keys. I found myself checking into a low-cost motel 2 towns over. I wasn't looking for comfort, I was looking for space. The days that followed felt like being caught in a storm with no shelter. Part of me burned with the urge to go back, slam the door open, and demand answers. I wanted to scream at her, make her feel the pain she caused. But the other part of me, it just wanted to disappear. To sink into that lumpy mattress and vanish from the world. I thought about ending the marriage more than once during those days. But it's not as simple as packing a bag and saying goodbye. Marriage isn't just 2 people, it's a life you've built together. Memories you've shared, and most painfully, kids who trust you to keep the family whole. Her messages started coming in on the first night. At first, they were short. Where are you? Are you okay? Then they became longer, desperate. Please talk to me, I need you to come home. I read your letter and am sorry I didn't come clean to you. I am deeply sorry, and I regret my actions. I agree to your conditions, but please come home. Call me if you can. I need to know you are okay. The kids are worried. I couldn't bring myself to reply. Each notification felt like a punch to the gut. I wondered what she was thinking. Was she panicking, relieved I was gone? Maybe she hadn't even read the letter yet. I thought about her face when she found it, whether she cried or if she stared at it coldly, calculating her next move. I hated that I couldn't stop caring about her reaction. I spent most of my time sitting on the edge of that motel bed, replaying the messages I found on her screen. I kept asking myself the same questions. Why did she do it? Why didn't she tell me about the blackmail? And most of all, what was I supposed to do now? After 5 days of going in circles, I realized something. I wasn't going to find clarity sitting in that dingy motel room. My kids were at home, probably wondering why their dad disappeared. And Emma, I couldn't move forward until I heard the truth directly from her lips. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not by a long shot. But I owed it to myself and to the kids to face the mess head on. When I walked into the house, it felt different, heavier and quieter. The moment I stepped inside, the kids appeared in the hallway. My youngest ran up to me without hesitation, throwing her arms around my legs. "Daddy, where were you?" she asked, her voice small but filled with relief. My eldest stood a few steps back, looking at me cautiously. He wasn't the type to show his emotions easily, but I could see it in his eyes. The same question, the same relief mixed with confusion. I knelt and hugged my youngest, smoothing her hair as I said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I just needed to clear my head for a bit." It was the only answer I could give. The kids didn't ask any more questions, and Emma wasn't in sight. I told the kids to go back to their room, promising we'd talk later. Then I stepped into the kitchen. Emma was at the table, her head down. Her hair was pulled back messily, and her eyes were red and puffy. When she looked up and saw me, her whole body seemed to sag with emotion. "I read the letter," she said softly, her voice hoarse from crying. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms to steady myself. "Then you know I saw the messages." She nodded quickly, her lower lip trembling. "I was going to tell you, I swear, Jacob, I was going to." Her voice cracked, and she broke into a sob, burying her face in her hands. I stood there, watching her fall apart. "I stayed away," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "I couldn't look at you without hearing his name, without seeing every word you typed back to him. I forced the words out, but I'm here now because I need to know why. Emma, why did you do it?" Emma finally told me everything. She sat across from me at the dining table. She couldn't look me in the eye at first, just started with a shaky, "It wasn't what you think." She didn't drag it out. She said it happened during a rough patch in our marriage. "It was just once," she told me, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't interrupt, even though my chest felt like it was about to explode. She said she regretted it immediately and that she ended it right away. But Mark had decided he wasn't done. When she refused to see him again, he started threatening her, saying he'd tell me everything if she didn't give in. That's when the blackmail began. I remember sitting there, staring at her, trying to keep my face calm even though I was anything but. She said she thought she could handle it on her own. She didn't want to hurt me, she said, and to protect the kids. But all I could think was, why didn't you trust me enough to tell me before I found out on my own? I didn't say much in that moment. I didn't trust myself to speak. All I knew was that I felt two things at once: a deep, burning anger at what she'd done, and, oddly enough, a small flicker of understanding. I could see how scared she was, how much she hated herself for what she'd done. But that didn't make it any easier to swallow. After some days of trying to make things work, we decided on therapy. I wasn't even sure it would help, but we went. Let me tell you, those first sessions were brutal. The therapist asked questions I didn't want to answer, and made us sit in silence when the truth was too raw to say out loud. Emma admitted to everything, she didn't try to dodge blame. But her answers were short, clipped, like she was trying to avoid making things worse. The therapist called it emotional self-protection, I called it hard to believe. I didn't hold back either, I told the therapist and Emma that I couldn't fully trust her. Not yet, maybe not ever. I told them both how I was willing to make things work because of the kids. And how betrayed I felt, how embarrassed, and how stupid. I could tell it hurt Emma to hear it, but I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. This was our mess, and if we were going to get through it, we had to be honest about how deep we were stuck in it. I'm not going to lie, therapy didn't magically fix everything. There were moments I felt like walking out and never looking back. But over time, little by little, it became a place where we could at least start to talk. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't easy, but it was something. The day we reported Mark to the police felt odd. She explained everything while making her statement. The affair, how she ended it, and how Mark had been threatening her. I stood beside her. When she finished, she looked at me. I wasn't sure what was in her eyes, gratitude, hope. I nodded, but I didn't say a word. We walked out in silence. That night, I lay awake, realizing we dealt with Mark, he was out of our lives now. But this wasn't the end, it was just one step in a journey that still felt uncertain. Emma didn't waste time proving she wanted to fix what was broken. She handed me her phone without me even asking. You can look through everything, she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling just a little. Her laptop, same deal. She even started telling me where she was going and when she'd be back, down to the minute. I didn't ask for these things, but I think she knew I needed them to rebuild trust. For me, it wasn't as simple. I wanted to trust her, God, I wanted to. But every time I looked at her, the memories of what I'd read came rushing back. It wasn't that I hated her, trying to love her again felt like trying to run through wet cement. But then there were these moments, unexpected ones, where I'd catch a glimpse of the woman I fell in love with. The hardest part of all of this wasn't my pain, it was watching it spill over onto the kids. Kids aren't stupid, they know when something's wrong, even if you don't say it out loud. Our eldest, Ryan, started staying in his room more. One night, he came downstairs after everyone else had gone to bed. I was sitting at the kitchen table, he just stood there for a second. Before he asked, "Are you and Mom going to be okay?" I didn't know what to say because, honestly, I wasn't sure myself. But I couldn't leave him hanging like that, so I said, "We're trying, buddy, we're going to try really hard." I realized my anger and pain weren't just mine to carry. They were bleeding into my kids' lives too, and I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let my hurt be the reason they lost their family. That night, I promised myself I'd keep trying, no matter how hard it got. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Emma and I were sitting in the living room. She turned to me and said, "I know this is a long shot, but maybe we could renew our vows." Not a big thing, just us. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me thought, why would I say those words again if I'm not even sure I mean them? But the other part, the part that still loved her deep down, thought maybe this is what we need, a fresh start. So I said yes. It wasn't some fairy tale moment, we didn't cry or kiss under the stars. It was awkward and messy, just like us, but it was real, and sometimes real is enough. You know, I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. People talk about it like it's this big, dramatic moment. Like one day you wake up, decide to forgive, and poof, everything is back to normal. But that's not how it works, at least not for me. Forgiveness doesn't come all at once. It's not like opening a door and suddenly being on the other side. It's more like walking a long, uneven path. Some days you move forward, other days you trip on a rock or you stop to catch your breath because it's just too hard to keep going. Today, I took another step. I don't know what tomorrow will feel like or the day after that. But right now, I'm trying, and that's all I can do. What about you? If you were in my shoes, do you think you could forgive? Could you keep walking down that path, or would you turn back and close the door for good? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, there isn't. But I wonder, what would you do? What do you think I should do? Let me know in the comments, I'd like to hear your thoughts.